I have a really hard conversation to have with you today. I'm going to be talking to you about starting, having, and moving really difficult conversations. See, the drive behind hard conversations is conflict. And here's how we define conflict. Conflict occurs when two people cannot agree on a way to meet their needs. I said needs. I did not say wants. Most times we assume that conflict is happening because people aren't just getting what they want. Truth is, it's because we're not getting what we need. So we take that and then we put it into the middle of a conversation around hard things to talk about. You define whatever hard things looks like for you. I know when I'm having to have a hard conversation, when I have to tell somebody something they don't want to hear, when I have to tell somebody something that they need to hear, when I have to say no to someone, when I have to set someone straight, those are hard conversations, because at the middle of every hard and difficult conversation is a relationship. All of us want to save a relationship, but also at the same time, tell somebody something that's important, inform them about something that's important, or worse, sometimes have to let them go because they're an employee. I've had to have all those types of conversations. I remember one conversation having to let someone go. Not because I didn't want this employee, but because the economics just did not work anymore. It was not possible for me to maintain that relationship with that particular person as an employee. It wasn't because the person was bad. It wasn't because the person didn't perform well. It's because the economics didn't work. And it was an extremely hard conversation for me to have because it felt like a personal failure. Those are the types of conversations you're going to have with family, with friends, with colleagues, with employees, with bosses. You have to have hard conversations. So here's how you start a hard conversation. Please don't start a hard conversation with a preamble. You know, the US Constitution has a preamble. It has a section that kind of lays out what we're going to discuss. Please don't have preambles. Here's what preambles look like. You know I love you, right? Whenever you start with a preamble, everybody perks up, right? Technically, they tense up is what they do. They tense up because they know bad news is on the way. The best way to start a conversation that is hard is just to hit the nail on the head right there. That's what you have to do. You have to say, I need to tell you something right now. You tell them exactly what it is. When we use a preamble, we're preparing ourselves, but making it really difficult for the other person to receive what we're going to say. So you start the conversation by making sure you tell the person exactly why you're having that conversation. That's the best way to start it. Now, how do you move that conversation? You've started it by just telling the person exactly what you're thinking and what needs to be said. You move that conversation by making sure you allow the other person to engage in the conversation. It's supposed to be a conversation. That's how it works. That means a dialogue. You share, they share. You share, they share. That's how it works. And part of that dialogue is asking questions. But we also have to listen. See, listening is a form of spiritual hospitality. We invite someone into our very being, and we listen with our entire being. You and me hear with our ears, but we listen with our entire being. We listen with our ears, our eyes, our entire body. We have to listen to the other person, look at their body language, see if they're uncomfortable, talk to them about, you understand their level of being uncomfortable, and you still want to have this conversation because they're important enough for you to have that conversation. So again, you start the conversation without a preamble. You move the conversation along by making sure it's a dialogue, because hard conversations require dialogue. If all you had to do was tell a person they were fired, or tell a person that they did you wrong, or tell a person that something is not working, you wouldn't need to have a conversation. You would put a notice up somewhere, you would send them a text or send them an email. That's not a dialogue and that's not a conversation. If you want to have a conversation and a dialogue with someone, make sure there are no preambles. Please don't tell me that you love me and then you chop my legs off. I'd rather you just chop my legs off and then we continue with the conversation. So start the conversation, no preamble. Move the conversation along by being able to listen and create a space for dialogue. As far as ending a hard conversation, I'd love to say that you should make sure no hurt feelings happen. Hurt feelings are going to happen. Make sure you don't focus on hurt feelings, because clearly it's uncomfortable for you. It's a hard conversation because it's uncomfortable for you. It's also uncomfortable for the other person. So rather than focusing on each other's feelings in that way, what you would do is talk about next steps. Make it as practical and as easy for them to do whatever it is that you're sharing. So on my end, when I had to let an employee go, I told them right then and there, this is what needs to happen. We had a dialogue and they told me how disappointed they were, how hurt they were. And I told them I was disappointed too and I was hurt and I wish the circumstances were different. And we ended the conversation with a focus on here are some next steps. As in, here are the things I'm going to do to mitigate the hurt that you're going to experience. Here's a thing that I'm going to do to make sure that you land on your feet, because I know in this particular case, you're a good employee. So in order for us to start and move and end really hard conversations, we have to be strategic. And that means we don't allow our emotions to take over the entire conversation, because the moment our emotions take over the entire conversation, we lose the person that we're having a conversation with, and we lose the force that we need to bring inside that conversation. I know that conversations are getting harder and harder. We don't trust one another. We see one another as the enemy. But for the conversations that I know for a fact you are looking at that are meaningful to you and you care about the other person and you want to maintain and salvage the relationship, the investment is worth it. And if you focus on the investment of putting in the work and doing the work that you need to do to ensure that that relationship is salvaged because you've told the truth and you've not spared the person the hurt by telling them the truth, one day they will appreciate you and respect you. It may not be that same day that you give them the information, but one day that will happen. Hopefully this conversation has been helpful for you, and I look forward to seeing you in another video. Have a good one.